So Yamaha just announced the release of the all-new 2022 R7. Now I'm going to try to explain to you guys what this bike is, by first explaining what this bike is not. This bike is not based off of the R6. In fact, it is slower than the R6. This is because the R7 actually has a 689cc parallel twin engine opposed to the R6, which has a 599cc inline 4. If you guys never saw my video about the differences between engine displacement and power, then I'd highly recommend you check it out if this confuses you. But to sum that video up, even though the R7 has a bigger engine, because it has fewer cylinders, it makes less peak horsepower. So now that is the elephant in the room. The R7 is a slower bike, and it has an engine that sounds something like this. If that sounds familiar, then you may have recognized it because the R7 uses the exact same engine found in the Yamaha MT-07. Now the MT-07 is a fantastic bike, and it has a great engine, and although it makes a lot less peak horsepower than the R6, it does make a lot more bottom end power and has a little bit more torque. If you own an R6 or any 600 really, then it's comforting to know that this R7 will feel stronger than your 600 on low and mid-range power. But anyway, let's go back to the R7 and get to the specs. Now we do know it makes 72 horsepower at 8,750 RPM and 49.5 foot-pound of torque at 6,500 RPM. It has 41mm KYB inverted forks, dual 4-piston radial calipers in the front, and Yamaha claims the wet weight will be at around 414 pounds. And Yamaha claims that it will get 58 miles per gallon, which is pretty impressive. And the R7 isn't without features either. It has a slipper clutch, LED headlights, a gear indicator, fuel capacity and economy indicators on a full LCD instrument panel, and an optional quick shifter for upshifts only. As for the aesthetics of the bike, I think it looks fine. It looks similar to the R3 at a first glance. I like the vent look on the fuel tank and the tail that has the scoops like the larger R1, which is nice looking. Overall, not a particularly gorgeous bike in my opinion, but it still looks really nice and I have no problem with the aesthetics at all. Now here comes my issue with this bike. Actually, I don't have an issue with the bike itself. The bike itself is awesome. This is a direct competitor to the new Aprilia RS660. And not only that, but people have been putting track fairings and clip-ons on the MT-07 since it came out. They regard it as a great track bike platform, so this bike makes a lot of sense, and if I were to get a track bike as a novice, I would absolutely pick up the R7 over the R6 because I imagine it would be a much easier and possibly more rewarding bike to ride around a track. However, my problem is that Yamaha called this the R7, and yes, I know this is me being nitpicky, but this is my hill and I will die on it. Back a couple of years ago, I made a video on the original R7, which was an extremely rare race bike which featured an inline 4 engine. And this bike has a parallel twin engine. Now like I said before, the engine is fine, the bike is fine, everything is okay. In a vacuum, this bike is perfectly fine with me. However, I just hate to see Yamaha disrespect the R7 name by giving it to this bike, which in my opinion is not reminiscent of the original R7 at all. Now this isn't surprising, Honda did the exact same thing with their CBR600RR, and I understand that Yamaha wants the brand recognition of the R7 versus calling it something like the MT-07R or whatever, but the R7 should have an inline 4 engine to wear that name in my opinion. But hey, at the end of the day, it's a cool bike that will probably be fantastic to ride. It's just a name and I'm sure I'll get over it. Now unfortunately, there's one more problem. I believe the R7 is evidence that the 600 class is indeed going to die for sure. Yamaha already canceled their R6, and I'm starting to think the rest of the 600 class will do the same in years to come. I hope I am wrong because as you guys know, I've owned a CBR600RR for 6 years now. It's my favorite bike and I just hate the thought of seeing the legacy die. But this is where we are at. Emission regulations, production costs, sales figures, the rise of the naked bikes, and much more are all playing factors in the death of the 600 class. I feel as if the R7 is a glimpse into the future of what middleweight sport bikes will look like. In conclusion, I love the idea of the R7. I actually really want to try one out. I bet it will be a ton of fun and I would actually even prefer it over an R6 for track days because I feel it would be a better introduction into that type of riding. However, I don't like how Yamaha calls it the R7 and I worry about the future outcome of the 600 class. Anyway, that's it for this one. I hope you all enjoyed. Please let me know down in the comment section below what your thoughts of the new R7 are. Does the parallel twin engine bother you, or are you excited about the extra low-end power? And am I alone on being annoyed that Yamaha calls it the R7? I'm actually really curious of how many of you are bothered by that, or if it's just me. Please let me know down below, and as always, thank you guys for watching.
Let me live my life, the one I'd better lead. All the plans of fantasies, and we looked at them, I love it.